You owe the HOA $120,000. 3 days. I'd owned my uncle's ranch for exactly 3 days when the stranger walked onto my porch, looked me in the eye, and said those words like he was reading the weather forecast. No warning, no explanation, just a deadline and a threat to take my land. I stood there on that Tuesday morning in December, coffee mug warm in my hand, steam rising into the cold mountain air, trying to process what my ears had just heard. The sun had barely cleared the tree line, casting long shadows across gravel, while frost still clung to fence posts. Birds were making more noise than people, which had suited me just fine until 30 seconds ago. The man in front of me was mid-50s, face red, from either cold or anger, wearing a golf shirt tucked too neatly into khakis. He held a thick binder under his arm like it was a badge of authority. He hadn't said hello, hadn't asked my name, hadn't even confirmed I was the owner. "You're the new owner of this property, correct?" he asked flatly. I nodded slowly, December wind cutting through my flannel. "Yeah, I inherited it from my uncle. That's when he dropped it on me. Then you've inherited his unpaid HOA dues as well. 12 years of back payments with penalties and interest. $120,000. I actually laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to accept what was happening on this frozen December morning. "I'm sorry." "Did you just say HOA?" He nodded. "Spring Valley Homeowners Association. This ranch falls under our jurisdiction." That's when the coffee almost slipped out of my hand. My uncle had never mentioned an HOA. Not once. And this was a man who would remind you if you owed him $20. I looked past the stranger, out over land dusted with December snow acres of open pasture, pine trees heavy with winter frost, a dirt road that hadn't been paved in my lifetime, no gates, no signs, no clubhouse, no swimming pool, nothing that even remotely resembled an HOA. "I don't think this property is part of any association," I said carefully, breath fogging in December air. His jaw tightened. "According to our records, it is. And if payment isn't received within 30 days, the HOA will have no choice but to place a lien on the property." There it was. The threat delivered on a cold December morning. He snapped the binder shut, handed me a single sheet of paper, then walked back toward a black SUV. On the door was a small decal, Spring Valley HOA. He drove off without another word. Tire tracks cutting through December frost. I stood there long after the sound of his engine disappeared, the paper shaking slightly in my hand. The morning was still beautiful. Birds hadn't stopped singing. The land covered in December, snow hadn't changed. But something else had. That's when I knew, whatever they were trying to pull, it wasn't a mistake. And I wasn't about to hand over my uncle's land without a fight. My name is Marcus Carter. I'm 34 years old. And until 3 days ago, my life was about as ordinary as it gets. I taught high school science, in Houston physics mostly. I graded papers at night. Drank coffee too strong. Complained about traffic like everyone else. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. I wasn't looking for a fight. I'm also a black man who just inherited a 100-acre ranch in a predominantly white mountain community. That detail matters more than I wanted it to. Land disputes were something you read about, not something that happened to people like me. My Uncle Mike was my mother's older brother. Never married? No kids. He lived alone on this ranch for 40 years and liked it that way. He wasn't antisocial, just private. He believed a man didn't need much to be content as long as he had land under his boots and quiet at the end of the day. When I was a kid, I spent summers here. He taught me to ride a horse before I could drive. He showed me how to mend fences, read weather, tell when the creek would rise just by the sound through winter pines. That ranch was his life's work. He'd bought the land decades ago when it was cheap because no one wanted something so far from town. He built the barn himself, hauled timber, dug fence posts by hand through frozen ground. He used to tell me, land doesn't belong to people the way you think. You belong to it. Your job is just to take care of it while you're here. When he passed last month, I was stunned to learn he'd left the ranch to me. I hadn't expected anything, but there it was. Carter's Edge was now my responsibility. So I quit my job, sold my Houston condo, packed everything into a rented truck, and drove north with my dog while December snow began falling. That first week felt like stepping into another lifetime. No traffic, no sirens, just wind through frozen trees and the creak of the old farmhouse settling at night. The driveway stretched nearly half a mile from the road. Framed by a simple wooden arch my uncle had built, Carter's Edge. Est. 1,984. No gates. No guard shack. No list of rules. No HOA welcome packet. And that mattered, because if this place had been part of an HOA, there would have been signs. Someone would have told my uncle. Someone would have told me, but there was nothing, which made that man's claim feel wrong. Standing on the porch in December, cold, I tried to replay every conversation I'd had with my uncle. He'd told me about droughts, bad winters, developers offering checks with too many zeros, but never an HOA. That's when the thought crept in. Maybe this wasn't about unpaid dues. Maybe someone had been waiting for my uncle to be gone. I didn't sleep much that night. By morning, the quiet didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt observed. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the paper. At the top, Spring Valley Homeowners Association. Below, a breakdown of numbers that made my stomach tighten. Annual dues, late fees, penalties, interest, all stacked to reach $120,000. At the bottom, payment due within 30 days to avoid further enforcement action. That word, enforcement, sat heavy. Later that morning, I drove into town through December snow, following the address on the notice. The HOA office was a glass front building between a real estate brokerage and nail salon. Fresh paint, polished floors. It felt less like community space and more like temporary command post. The man from my porch was there, Sterling Vance. According to his nameplate, Mr. Carter, he said, standing as I entered. I figured you'd be coming by. I didn't sit. I need to understand how my uncle's ranch ended up under an HOA. Sterling smiled, gestured to a chair, then opened his binder tabs labeled color-coded prepared. According to our records, your uncle's property was included in the Spring Valley expansion plan several years ago. Expansion plan? Approved by who? He slid a map across the desk. Clean lines, crisp borders, and wrapped inside, Carter's Edge. This reflects current HOA jurisdiction. I studied it. The ink looked too fresh. When was this approved? The HOA restructured its charter last year. Certain properties were reassessed. That's not how zoning works. You don't just redraw lines around private land. He smiled again. These changes are pending final county review, but while that process is underway, we're within our rights to request compliance. Pending? That word? I'm a science teacher. You don't enforce conclusions that haven't been verified. You don't fine someone $120,000 based on a map still under review unless you're betting they're too scared to notice. I flipped through the binder. Barn color restrictions. Fence standards. Livestock limitations. A note stating pets needed to be indoors after 7 in December evenings. You're telling me I can't keep cattle near my fence line? Community standards. What community? There isn't a house within sight of my property. That may change. Development accelerates once groundwork is laid. There it was. This wasn't about rules. It was about control, turning land into something sellable. And if I don't comply, Sterling didn't hesitate. Then the HOA will pursue all available remedies. Liens. Enforcement actions. Asset recovery. I stood. My uncle fought hard to keep that land independent. If there's been a mistake, I'll prove it. Sterling's smile never wavered. These situations rarely end well for people who resist. I walked out, back in my truck. I sat there before starting the engine. The town looked the same, people going about their day. Cars passing. But I understood now. This HOA wasn't confused. They were counting on fear. And fear only works if you don't question the details. I didn't drive straight back. Instead, I headed to the general store, the kind of place that had outlived trends and bad ideas. The bell rang as I stepped inside, stamping December snow from boots. Behind the counter stood a woman with silver hair and eyes that missed little. She looked up, studied me, then nodded. You must be Mike's nephew. Yes. Ma'am, Marcus Carter. I'm Linda. Your uncle came in every Thursday. Same order. Black coffee. Never sugar. That told me I was in the right place. I was hoping you could help me. Spring Valley HOA. Her smile vanished. She let out a tired laugh. So, they finally came for you. They're saying my uncle's ranch falls under their jurisdiction. 12 years of back dues. Linda leaned forward, lowering her voice, though no one else was near. Honey, that land has been outside their boundary since the day Spring Valley drew the line. Are you sure? Absolutely. She reached beneath the counter and pulled out a dented cigar box. These towns remember things, even when people pretend they don't. She thumbed through yellowed clippings until she stopped on one and slid it across. The headline, Rancher Defeats HOA in Landmark Ruling. The date, 10 years ago. Your uncle didn't just say no. Linda said, he humiliated them. I scanned the article. Boundary disputes. HOA attempting to annex unplatted land. A judge ruling Carter's Edge was not part of Spring Valley and never had been. He fought them in court. And he won. Clean and clear. My hands curled around the paper. Then why try again? Linda leaned back. Because the man who knew how to stop them isn't here anymore. Sterling Vance? Him and his wife? She's been itching to expand those borders for years. Golf courses. Townhomes. Luxury estates. Your uncle's land was the one piece they couldn't touch. So they waited. She nodded. Waited until Mike was gone. Until someone new showed up who didn't know the history. Did my uncle think they'd try again? Linda looked at me. Once, he told me, they'll come back when I'm dead. People like that always do. A chill ran through me. You need to be careful. Marcus, these people don't like losing. Outside? December sun was still high. Cars passed. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. This wasn't about unpaid dues. It was about land. And they'd waited until the one man who could stop them was gone. As I climbed into my truck, one question circled. If my uncle had already beaten them, why were they acting like they'd never lost? The answer was simple. They thought I didn't know the rules. They were about to find out how wrong they were. That afternoon, I started making calls. First, a property attorney in the city. Marcus Carter. I inherited my uncle's ranch 3 days ago. Now an HOA is claiming $120,000 based on a map that's still pending. Pause. Mike Carter's nephew? Yes, sir. Your uncle was a good man. Stubborn, but good. You're right to be suspicious. Pending means it's not enforceable. Come see me tomorrow. Bring everything. Second, a surveyor Everett, who'd drawn the original boundaries. Carter's Edge. I remember that case. Drew those lines myself. That land was explicitly excluded from Spring Valley. Can you prove it? I can sign an affidavit. Those are the original boundaries. Carter's Edge was never part of that HOA. Relief hit me. But it lasted exactly until I looked out the window. At the edge of my driveway, new markers had appeared, small plastic survey flags, bright orange, fluttering in December wind. They hadn't been there this morning. Survey flags don't appear unless someone plans to change something. That's when I heard the engine. A white SUV rolled past my arch onto the property like it belonged there. I raised my hand. The SUV stopped. 2 people got out. Sterling Vance adjusted his glasses, but it was the woman stepping from the passenger side who commanded attention. She was striking in a way that felt deliberate, late 40s, carrying herself with calculated poise. What caught my eye was how she was dressed for a December ranch visit. The crimson-red blazer was tailored to perfection, cut close, worn open just enough to reveal the black silk blouse beneath with its deep V-neck. The fitted pencil skirt matched the blazer's bold red, glossy red heels that had no business on frozen ground but looked entirely intentional. Her hair was burgundy wine, falling in styled waves to her shoulders despite December wind. Her lips were painted the same confident red as her blazer. She carried a clipboard, but where Sterling's felt bureaucratic, hers felt like a weapon. Mr. Carter, she said, voice smooth and authoritative. I'm Diane Vance, president of Spring Valley HOA. Pause. Sterling's wife. So Sterling was the messenger. She was the power. We're documenting non-compliance. This property is under review. Under review doesn't give you permission to be here. She smiled thin. Practiced. We're operating under HOA authority. You're trespassing. I'm asking you to leave. She didn't move. Instead, she pointed toward my barn. That structure appears to violate community safety standards. That barn's been standing longer than you've been alive. And you don't represent any community I agreed to join. Sterling lifted a camera. Diane's burgundy hair moved slightly in winter wind. Document everything, she said calmly. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Perfect. We're both documenting this. They exchanged glances. I didn't raise my voice, just stood there, letting silence stretch. After a few seconds, Diane's red lips pressed into a thin line. We'll note your objection, but this process is moving forward regardless of your cooperation. Not on my land. She studied me, calculating, measuring, then turned back to the SUV. Crimson blazer, bright against white snow. Red heels leaving prints in December frost. You should reconsider your position. Mr. Carter. Sterling was being generous with his timeline. I'm not. They drove off. Sterling behind the wheel. Diane holding that clipboard. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with all documents spread out. The pieces were starting to fit. Diane Vance wasn't just enforcing rules. She was orchestrating something bigger. Sterling was the face. She was the architect. Around midnight, headlights flashed near the barn. By the time I reached the yard, they were gone. But something had been left. A laminated notice stapled to a fence post. Notice of violation. Unauthorized structure under HOA review. No signature. No county seal. Just the logo and beneath. Authorized by Diane Vance. President? I tore it down. Evidence. That's when I admitted what I'd been avoiding. Diane Vance wasn't bluffing. She was testing boundaries, mine and the law's. The woman in the crimson blazer had just declared war. By morning, my decision was made. Diane wasn't just pushing paper. She was putting people on my land. I packed my uncle's documents and headed toward the city. The drive down was quiet, giving me time to think. My first stop was Everett. His office sat behind older buildings, modest and unassuming. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and ink. Rolled maps leaned against walls. Everett stood behind a table, suspenders over shoulders, studying a map. He looked up. You're Mike Carter's nephew. Yes, sir. Marcus. He nodded slowly. I figured they'd come after you next. He unrolled plats, thick paper, deep survey stamps. I drew these myself. Original boundaries. At the corner was a note. Parcel excluded per original HOA charter. Spring Valley tried to pull that land in years ago. Your uncle refused. Took them to court. Judge ruled in his favor. So they lost. Lost hard. And they've been pretending it never happened since. I told him everything. The binder. The map. The flags. The notice. The woman in the crimson blazer. Everett listened. They're abusing the word pending. Hoping you don't know the difference between a review and a ruling. Can you help me prove it? I'll sign an affidavit swearing these are the original boundaries, and Carter's Edge was never part of that HOA. Relief hit me. He was halfway through signing when he paused and glanced toward the window. I followed his gaze. Across the street, a dark SUV sat parked. Two people stood beside it, Sterling and Diane in her crimson blazer, not approaching. Just standing there. Sterling lifted a camera and took a photo of Everett's building. Then my truck. Then me through the glass. My phone buzzed. Text from Linda Jack. There's an HOA SUV parked down the block. They've been asking around. The people outside didn't look threatening. That was the point. They were documenting. Watching. They want you to know you're being tracked. Everett said. Every move logged. The man with the camera, Sterling, lowered it just long enough to make eye contact. Then he looked at his clipboard and wrote something. Diane stood beside him in her crimson blazer and red heels. Burgundy hair catching winter light. Red lips curved in a slight smile. Everett slid the affidavit across. Take this to your lawyer. And don't give them reason to twist anything. I folded it carefully. As I walked out, the two didn't move, didn't block me, just watched as I got into my truck. That's when it hit me. They weren't trying to stop me. They were counting on me leaving, because whatever Diane was planning next, she didn't want me near the ranch when it happened. I didn't go straight back after leaving Everett's. I drove to meet the attorney in the city. By the time we finished going over documents, afternoon had shifted toward evening. I checked my phone before leaving. No missed calls. No messages. That should have comforted me. It didn't. The drive back up felt longer. The road twisted through familiar curves. But something in my chest tightened with every mile. When I finally turned onto my driveway, the first thing I noticed was the dust. It hung in December air, thicker than it should have been. Then I saw the tracks. Deep. Wide. Fresh. Bulldozer tracks. My heart dropped. I hit the brakes and jumped out, running the rest of the way. The barn was still standing, but not the way it had been that morning. One entire side had been torn open, wood splintered and crushed inward. The roof sagged at an angle that made my knees weaken. Broken beams lay scattered, half buried in churned dirt. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My uncle had built that barn himself, board by board. Now it looked like something had taken a bite out of it. A man in a reflective vest noticed me. "Sir, you need to stay back." "Who told you to do this?" I shouted. He pointed toward a pickup. "We're here under an emergency abatement order. Safety hazard." I walked closer. Stapled to what was left of the barn's post was a bright red notice. Unsafe structure. Emergency code violation. No county seal. No inspector's name. Just the Spring Valley HOA logo. They'd slapped a generic safety sticker on a barn that had stood 50 years. This structure posed immediate risk. The man continued. "We were authorized to mitigate the hazard." By who? The HOA. They hadn't waited for a court order. They'd waited for me to leave. I stepped back and looked around. Survey flags still fluttered. The barn was destroyed. They weren't claiming the land anymore. They were erasing it. I dropped to one knee and picked up a broken plank. It was heavy. Rough. Familiar. My uncle's work. They didn't just destroy a building. They destroyed proof. Proof the land had been used, maintained, cared for. Behind me, an engine shut off. A man climbed down from the bulldozer, face pale. I swear, I thought this was legit. They showed me paperwork. "Who signed it?" He pulled a folded sheet from his pocket. HOA letterhead. A signature at the bottom. Diane Vance. The name burned. I took the paper and folded it carefully. The crew finished and left. No apologies. Just engines starting. Dust settling. The ranch was quiet. Too quiet. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with lights off, staring at the damaged barn silhouette against December sky. My phone buzzed. Marcus, too. I just heard about the barn, so they weren't even hiding it. I leaned back. This wasn't an HOA dispute. It wasn't legal gray area. They'd crossed a line on purpose, knowing damage would be done before anyone could stop them. They'd done it while I was gone. I stood and walked outside. Stars were out, sharp and clear. The same ones my uncle used to point at when he talked about how small people are compared to land and time. Diane Vance hadn't just made a move, she'd declared war. And from that moment, there was no version where I backed down. Not after what they'd done. Not after what they'd taken. Whatever came next. It would not be quiet. The morning after the barn was torn open, I woke feeling like I hadn't slept. The ranch was quiet, the kind that comes after something violent. By mid-morning, the first certified letter arrived. Heavy paper, designed to intimidate. Final notice of non-compliance. They were moving fast. The letter accused me of violations, unauthorized structures, failure to adhere to standards, obstruction of emergency efforts. At the bottom, failure to comply may result in additional enforcement actions. An hour later, I found out what that meant. I was on the phone with the attorney when I heard a diesel engine. A tow truck rolled into my driveway. Behind it, a county vehicle idled. A man climbed out. "You, the owner of the black pickup? That's my truck. What's going on? We've got an order to tow it. On what grounds?" HOA complaint. Commercial vehicle parked in violation of community rules. This isn't a commercial vehicle. And this isn't an HOA community. He shrugged. I don't decide that. I turned to the county driver. You know this land isn't under HOA jurisdiction. He avoided my eyes. There's a pending review until it's resolved. We're required to enforce the notice. Pending. There it was again. They knew they couldn't win in court yet, so they were making sure I couldn't afford to get there. I watched as the chain tightened. That truck was how I got to town. How I hauled supplies. How I worked. You can contest it, the county driver said. There's a process. There was always a process. The truck was lifted, hauled away. Another piece of independence disappeared. Inside, my phone buzzed nonstop. Another letter, another email, another notice. One accused me of unauthorized wildlife management because deer grazed near my fence. Another cited me for failing to install HOA-approved fencing. One mentioned a violation regarding Pets My Dog not wearing an approved collar. It was absurd. And that was the point. This wasn't enforcement. It was attrition. By day's end, my bank app wouldn't load. I called and waited through hold music. A calm voice explained my account had been temporarily restricted due to a legal notice associated with a lien claim. A lien based on a map that was still pending. I hung up. No truck. No access to funds. Legal bills stacking. They weren't trying to prove they were right. They were trying to exhaust me. As the sun dipped low, headlights appeared. An old pickup rattled to a stop, Tom. My uncle's neighbor from the far ridge. Retired sheriff. Quiet man. Get in, he said simply. I hesitated. Already heard. I'm driving. On the drive into town, I told him everything. The barn. The letters. The tow. The frozen account. Tom listened. They always do this part. Paper cuts. Hoping you bleed out before anyone notices. What do I do? He glanced at me. You get louder. And you get smarter. The attorney met us that evening. I'll take this on contingency. If we win, I get paid and it won't be from you. Why? He smiled thinly. Because your evidence is clean. And because HOAs hate daylight. As Tom drove me back that night, the road felt different. I was still boxed in. Still under pressure. But I wasn't alone anymore. Diane Vance had tried to starve me out. Instead, she'd done something far worse. She'd given me witnesses. And the next move wouldn't be quiet. The courthouse didn't look dramatic. Gray stone. Wide steps. Flags barely moving. It was designed to calm people down. Tom dropped me at the curb and gave me a single nod. Inside. The hallway smelled of paper and old coffee. Shoes echoed. Conversations were hushed. Sterling Vance was already there. Standing near the courtroom doors, binder tucked under his arm. When he saw me, he smiled, confident. Polite, practiced. My attorney arrived moments later. You ready? I've been ready since they tore down the barn. He nodded. Good. Then let's keep this simple. Inside. The judge took her seat and called the case. The HOA's attorney went first. Long sentences. Smooth delivery. Lots of words that sounded official without saying much. He talked about community standards, safety concerns, pending jurisdictional reviews, and the HOA's responsibility to act proactively. My attorney didn't interrupt, just listened, letting the rope play out. When it was our turn, he stood and approached the bench with documents. Your Honor, this case hinges on one claim, that my client's property falls under Spring Valley HOA authority. Pause. It does not. He laid the first document down. Exhibit A, the original court ruling from 10 years ago. Carter's Edge explicitly excluded from HOA jurisdiction. The judge reviewed it and nodded. Exhibit B, affidavit from Everett, licensed surveyor who drew the original boundaries. And Exhibit C, the HOA's own map. That got a reaction. The judge studied the map carefully. This document is marked as pending. Yes, Your Honor, and yet the HOA used it to justify fines, demolition, and enforcement actions totaling over $100,000. Sterling shifted in his seat, which brings us to the smoking gun. He held up a single page. The HOA claims Mr. Carter's uncle voluntarily joined the association years ago, making his property subject to dues and enforcement. The judge leaned forward. This is the alleged agreement. The signature is dated March 12th. He paused. On that date, Mr. Carter's uncle was in the ICU. He suffered a major cardiac event and was hospitalized for 6 days. We have medical records, hospital logs. The room went still. Your Honor, on March 12th. Mike Carter couldn't lift a spoon. He could not sign a contract. And yet, the HOA presents this as proof of consent. A murmur rippled through the gallery. We also submit phone records showing access to the HOA document system less than 48 hours before this agreement appeared. Metadata confirms the file was modified. Forgery. The word didn't need to be spoken. The judge removed her glasses and looked at Sterling. Mr. Vance, do you have an explanation for this discrepancy? Sterling opened his mouth, closed it. We acted in good faith based on information available at the time. Good faith does not include demolishing private property under a pending map, nor does it include submitting documents that appear to be falsified. She turned to the clerk. The lien is dismissed. The tow order is void. The HOA is barred from further enforcement against Carter's Edge. Effective immediately. I felt my shoulders drop. Furthermore, this court is referring the matter to the county attorney for investigation into potential fraud and abuse of authority. Sterling looked like someone had pulled the floor out. Outside. The sun felt warmer. Reporters gathered. Cameras. Microphones. Questions. I didn't say much. The truth had finally caught up. Sterling walked past without making eye contact. For the first time since this began, he looked small. As Tom picked me up, I realized something. They hadn't just lost in court. They'd lost control of the narrative. And once that happens, everything starts to fall apart. I thought winning in court would be the end. I was wrong. Winning stops the bleeding. But what happens after decides who really walks away. By the time Tom and I reached the courthouse steps, the sidewalk had turned into a corridor of microphones and cameras. Someone shouted my name. Another asked about the barn. Another about the forged documents. I raised a hand. I'm not here to perform. I'm here because someone tried to take land that didn't belong to them. That line made evening news. By next morning, it was everywhere. HOA president accused of fraud in land grab scheme. Rancher's barn demolished under pending map. The story spread fast, not because of me, but because people recognized the pattern. Emails started coming by dozens, then hundreds. Homeowners from other counties, other states, saying the same thing. They tried this with us too. We thought we were alone. That's when real damage began. Not to me. To them, by midweek. Spring Valley HOA's board announced an emergency meeting. Someone leaked the minutes. Arguments, accusations, finger-pointing. Sterling insisting everything had been misinterpreted. Others asking why his signature and Diane's kept appearing on documents no one else remembered approving. By Friday, 3 board members resigned. By Monday, the county attorney announced a formal investigation into zoning manipulation, document falsification, and abuse of emergency powers. Developers quietly pulled out. Glossy brochures vanished overnight. Spring Valley Estates Phase 3 was suddenly under review, pending, back at the ranch. The tow company called to schedule truck return. The bank unfroze my account, no apology. Just quiet correction. The barn would take longer. Neighbors showed up without asking. Some brought tools. Some lumber. Linda drove up with trays of sandwiches and coffee. Black. No sugar. One neighbor brought an old sign he'd saved from my uncle's place. Carter's Edge. Est. 1984. We leaned it carefully against what remained of the barn wall. Sterling and Diane Vance never came back. The last time I saw them was on news. Walking into a county building, heads down. No binders? The confident smile was gone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Because the land was quiet again. Not the tense quiet of waiting, but the honest kind. The kind my uncle used to talk about. The kind that comes after something false has been stripped away. That night, I sat on the porch with my dog at my feet, looking out over pasture where December sun dipped low and painted hills gold. The fight had taken something from me, but it had given something back too. Clarity, and the understanding that power only works when people believe they're alone. I wasn't alone anymore. And neither was anyone else who heard this story and realized they didn't have to be afraid of a binder and a bill. Not if the land is truly theirs. The ranch didn't look the same after that. Not because it was damaged land heals, but because I saw it differently. Where I once saw quiet, I now saw resilience. Where I once thought ownership was paperwork, I understood it was something deeper. Something that shows up in calloused hands, in fence posts set straight, in buildings that stand 50 years without asking permission. The barn took months to rebuild. Neighbors came and went. Some stayed all day. Some dropped off lumber and left without saying much. No one asked for credit. They talked about weather, cattle prices, and how my uncle used to wave from the porch one afternoon while we were setting the last beams. I found one of my uncle's old notes tucked in the leather folder I'd carried through courtrooms. Written in his handwriting. If you're reading this, it means they finally tried again. I sat there holding that scrap of paper. He had known. He had prepared. And in his own quiet way, he'd trusted me to finish what he started. The HOA never came back. Spring Valley quietly revised its boundaries to match the original ruling. No press release, no apology. Just a correction buried in paperwork where they hoped no one would notice. People noticed. Sometimes I think about Sterling and Diane Vance. Not with anger, not even satisfaction, just curiosity. I wonder if they believed what they were doing was justified, or if they'd simply gotten used to no one pushing back. Power dulls your sense of consequence. The land doesn't have that problem. It remembers everything. On quiet evenings now, I sit on the porch where this started. Same view, same wind, same stars. The only difference is the understanding that came with the fight. I didn't win because I was stronger. I won because I paid attention. Because I asked questions. Because I didn't panic when someone tried to rush me into compliance. And because I wasn't afraid to let the truth take its time. If there's one thing this land taught me, it's this. Anyone can wave a binder and demand obedience. But ownership doesn't come from intimidation. It comes from history, from stewardship, from standing your ground when it would be easier to walk away. So if someone ever shows up at your door with a number you don't recognize and a threat you didn't earn, remember this story. Read the fine print. Ask who benefits. Don't confuse confidence with authority, because sometimes the quietest piece of land in the room tells the loudest truth. And if you listen closely, it will tell you one thing clearly. They didn't just pick the wrong ranch. They picked the wrong owner.